what we've done is not develop a society that doesn't rely on people doing certain things. Mm-hmm. We've just cashed in one group of people for another group of people to do the same sorts of things, who are willing to do them for less money. So, for example, when I was a kid, there were lots of opportunities to do things with your hands, landscaping, roofing, those kinds of things. And they were valuable things to get into, not only because, you could earn a little money, but they had a way of introducing you to the physical world, and being introduced to the physical world reminds you that you just don't always get your way. Mm-hmm. The physical world is intransigent oftentimes, and teaches you things that you need to learn if you're going to be wise. Now, there are a lot of folks who've come to our country who are hardworking people, honest people, trying to make a living, but there's been a kind of favor that they've enjoyed from certain elites in our country, and there's another group of people who are on the losing side of the equation. I think that we can put a stress on training and educating young people in the trades, return to a strong emphasis on that. People don't all have to go to college. In fact, a lot of folks who end up going to college do so simply because they kind of feel like they have to, mm-hmm. in order to get the certifications that they need. Then they walk away with $50,000, $60,000 in debt, and they're trying to teach kindergarten for $24,000 a year, something like that.
Yeah.
But that they were forced into that. Anyway, so you're right. I think there were a set of priorities that people kind of promoted and pushed, and there was a failure to push back. I think in the last 10 years, I've seen some things that are encouraging in that regard. I think obviously Trump's appeal to that community is significant indication that those folks didn't go away, mm-hmm. that they're still there. But I also think people like Mike Rowe and Dirty Jobs and things like that, there's just been a lot of things here in the last 10 years, as I said, that have come about that I think have been a good reminder to our civic and political leaders that we need to return to a strong emphasis that supports people getting into these areas, and then being able to actually make a living doing these things, right?
Yeah. What do you think is the pathway for getting, young people interested in these jobs again? I mean, you hear all the time that, millennials and Gen Z is so lazy, they don't want to do anything. And like you've said, we have kind of outsourced a lot of these manual labor jobs, things like landscaping, construction, and that sort of thing to immigrants. How do you kind of incentivize the generations, to really prioritize this kind of work?
Well, I think this is where fathers, parents in general, but particularly fathers, are important. So to give you a little bit of insight into how I worked with my own kids in this matter. So I have 3 grown children. They're all married, all have kids. I have my boys have homes of their own that they own with their wives. And my oldest son went to an elite college, and it was a good choice for him. My second son, very bright. He reads Dostoevsky on his lunch break. He's that kind of bright, but he's a welder and a foreman for a major steel firm in the Hartford area. But when he was, getting out of high school, we would get together and have lunch, once a month and kind of talk about different things. He asked me what I thought he should do. I said, you should take a gap year. And during that gap year, go to trade school. And then he said, well, what should I study? And I could see, even as a little guy, that he had a real way with his hands. He was very good in terms of his spatial reasoning, in terms of his working with his hands. And he was efficient in his movements. I had been a framer for a while, and I wasn't efficient in my movements. And the guys that I worked for would tell me that. But I remember seeing him in action and thinking, this kid's kind of got it. He, might want to give college a try, but I think maybe his calling is, working with his hands and trades. And so they asked me what I thought he should do. I said, something dangerous. The reason why you want to do something dangerous is because somebody is going to be afraid to do it themselves, and they'll pay you to do it.
Yeah.
The problem with guys who go into being like house painters is everybody thinks they know how to paint.
Yeah.
It's like, I painted my bedroom once. Yeah, you did an awful job, but you don't know how bad it was because you don't have an eye for what it really should look like.
Yeah.
But that's the trouble with certain trades. But welding generally kind of spooks people. And I think working with electricity or plumbing, those kinds of things. So I encouraged him to do that. And anyway, he's only 25, and he oversees 25 men today as a foreman in the company that he works with.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm interested to hear if you think, most fathers, and we can kind of delve into the topic of the book you brought up earlier, but first I want to hear about if you think fathers know their sons and daughters well enough and know these sorts of things to steer them in that direction, because I think there is this kind of brainworm in kind of the Gen X and Boomer generation where you have to go to college to make it at all. Right. And I think that's a very deeply held belief, and it's I think held in a good intention. You want your kids to be successful, but do you think fathers know well enough to be able to do the kinds of things that you did with your children?
I think there are two ways that fathers can kind of go wrong in this, and then there's, I think, a different way to go that I think I pursued. So one way you can go wrong is that there are guys who were blue collar guys who wanted their kids to go on and do something more, I guess, lucrative or something with more status. And so you saw that a lot back in the day. You don't see it as much today.
Yeah.
But you saw it a lot back in the day where, say, a guy who was a framer or whatever said, don't do what I'm doing, it's taking such a toll on my body. You should be a doctor or something like that. That's great. I mean, doctors are more, we need them. But they kind of sold themselves short. Then on the other side, you've got people who are sort of cubicle gophers.
Yeah.
They live in cubicles all day. People that we make fun of in the office and stuff like that.
Yeah, an office space and all these. Yeah,
right. And they really don't have any personal exposure to the world of the trades, and so consequently, they don't know what to look for in their kids. They wouldn't know where to steer them, and they might even think of it as kind of a step down in status. I don't want my kid to do that. It would be embarrassing for me, to tell people at the office that my kid is a welder. Yeah, which is really goofy. But the third way, I think, which I think is a really fruitful way, is if, let's say, you're a person with education and you actually start to do things with your own hands. This is, what we see with Matthew B. Crawford and Shop Class of Soulcraft and all of that.
Yeah.
Marvelous thing about that book, Shop Class of Soulcraft, is here you have a guy I could relate to in certain ways because his parents were academics. He grew up in Berkeley. So think about it this way. So his parents were kind of hippies, and you're growing up in Berkeley. How do you rebel when your parents are hippies and they teach at Berkeley? Well, you subscribe to Soldier of Fortune magazine. That's how you rebel, and you get into welding and working on cars, and that's exactly what Crawford did. Now, eventually, he went on to get his PhD in political philosophy at the University of Chicago. But he became a motorcycle mechanic and an electrician, and is still, I think, very much involved in those things today and loves that stuff. So if you can like say, okay, I went to Harvard Divinity School, I can say that. I've got relatives who have been academic deans at major institutions. I'm completely unimpressed with that stuff. I've got relatives who are very wealthy. Money's nice, but yeah, that's just grandpa. That kind of thing. So if you got that kind of security in terms of your self-understanding, and then you start working with your hands, you discover that there's a whole world out there that you are really stupid and are inept in, and you grow in your appreciation for the people who are adept in it and who are wise and know how to work with materials in their hands and are good craftsmen. And consequently, you become a fuller person. You become a better sort of embodiment of that, Aristotelian ideal of a man in full,
Mm-hmm.
And when that occurs, then you end up in a situation where you can actually say to your, the son that, has an ability to work with his hands, hey, pursue that. I will be proud of you if you become a real craftsman.
Yeah.
And the kid will know it, So my kids, I've got kids who kind of reflect different features of my own life and background. And I love the fact that they're pursuing their callings in these different areas, and I'm proud of them for doing those things, and they're doing a really good job, each of them. So, but in my mind, being able to work with your hands and having real skill is way up there in terms of what ought to be respected and regarded. And it's a shame that more people don't think that way.